Okay guys, in this video we're going to attack solving linear equations, which I hope is a basic skill, but you may be a little bit rusty. We're going to start with simple equations, then we're going to work through ones that involve variables on both sides and some distributive property, solving proportions when we look at number 6, 7, 9, and 10. So basically all types of equations. Like I said, this is a skill that you probably have mastered in the past, you just need a little refresher, so I'm going to work quickly through these. The idea when solving a linear equation is to get the variable by itself on one side of the equation, nothing else around it. And we're going to do opposite operations to eliminate things so that we can get the variable by itself. So if you look at number 1, we have 4x minus 7 equals negative 35. We want x by itself, so I need to get rid of the 7 first. So I'm going to add 7, which is the opposite of negative. So I'm going to add it to both sides. Go ahead and cancel out. I get 4x equals negative 28 when I add these together. Divide by 4 to finish this problem off. X is equal to negative 7. Should be basic, should be easy. We'll get a little bit harder. Number 2, you see the distributive property. So first thing I must do is distribute the 3 to both terms. That's multiplication. So I get 3x minus 15 minus 5x equals 30. Now I add like terms on the same side. So I get 3x minus 5x gives me minus 2x. Still have the minus 15 equal to 30. And now this looks a lot like number 1. I'm adding 15. So I get negative 2x equals 45. And now I'm dividing by negative 2. So my final answer here, I can put this as a decimal, but it's probably just easy to leave it as a fraction. It doesn't simplify, so I'm just going to leave it as negative 45 over 2, and that's going to be my final answer. I'm very comfortable leaving these in improper fractions, and you should be too. Sometimes it saves us a lot of work. The only time you would not want to leave it like that is if you're dealing with a real world problem where it might make more sense to write your answer as a decimal. So if you look at number 3, similar, don't worry about the fraction, that might freak you out, but forget about it, just add 1, try to get x by itself, so I get 2 over 5x equals 5. Now to get rid of that fraction I can multiply by the reciprocal, so multiply by 5 over 2, that'll cancel that out. Do the same thing on the other side. X is equal, this is 5 over 1, we multiply fractions straight across, not cross multiply, but straight across. So 5 times 5 is 25, 1 times 2 is 2, and I'm done. My answer is 25 over 2. And I can just leave it like that. If you look at number 4, similar, getting a little harder now, we're distributing, but we're multiplying fractions. So I have 3/4 times 8 over 1. Multiply across, I get 24 on top and 4 on the bottom. So that reduces 24 divided by 4 gives me 6. This gives me 6x. 3/4 times 12, same thing. 12 times 3, 36. 4 times 1 is 4. 36 over 4 is 9. So this is going to give me minus 9 minus 5x equals 8. Now I'm going to do 6x and minus 5x combined like terms. That just gives me 1x minus 9 is equal to 8. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. I get that x is equal to 17. That's my final answer. So it looks a little harder, but just remember the rules, remember how to multiply fractions, remember to use the distributive property, remember how to combine like terms, remember that the sign in front of the number goes with that number, not the sign behind it. If you remember these little things, you're going to be very successful solving these problems. Okay, so we're going to now take a look at number 5, which is down here in the corner. Similar, I keep the 2, do nothing with it, but then I'm going to distribute the 3, so I get plus 3x minus 15 equals 4x minus 5. Now I have variables on both sides, but before I do anything, I'm going to combine the 2 and the negative 15. So this is going to be 3x minus 13 is equal to 4x minus 5. I'm now going to move the 3x over by subtracting. And when I do that, the x's are over here, so I'm going to move the 5 over to the other side to get rid of that. And when I do that, I'm going to get 4x minus 3x is just x, and then I'm going to have negative 13 plus 5 is going to give me negative 8, which is going to be my final answer. Number 6, it's a proportion. See, you have 2 fractions equal to each other, so here's where you will cross multiply. There's an equal sign in between. You're allowed to cross multiply across the equal sign. So this is going to be 9 times 2, which is going to be 18, is equal to x squared, or x plus 5 times x plus 8. Now I have to FOIL over here using polynomial rules. So x times x is x squared, x times 8 is 8x, 5 times x, 5x, 5 times 8, 40. Now I look at this and I say, let's combine these together, and let's subtract the 18 over, because this is a quadratic and it needs to be equal to 0 for me to solve it. So now I'm going to get x squared. I combine these in the middle and get 13x. And I take 40 minus 18 and get 22 is equal to 0. Now, at this point, you could use the quadratic formula, but I don't really have much room here to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor this. I notice that 2 times 11 is 22, and 2 plus 11 is 13. So I know that this breaks down to x plus 2, x plus 11 is equal to 0, which tells me then that my final answer is the opposite of those. So that's going to be negative 2 and negative 11. And I've now solved this problem. Notice that this problem has two solutions because of the nature of how hard it is. If you look at number 7, do the same thing. We cross multiply t times t and 12 times 3. So t times t is t squared. 12 times 3 is 36. Take the square root of both sides to get t by itself. T is equal to plus or minus 6. So you have two answers. You have positive 6 and negative 6 that work here. Okay, number 8, it's a little bit different. It's back to like the first page, so I'm going to distribute. So 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. 2/3 times 6, multiply across the top. 6 times 2 is 12. 3 times 1 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4, is equal to 8. So now I'm going to add 4. So I get 2/3 x equals 12. And then I do the same thing I did earlier. To get rid of the fraction, multiply by the reciprocal, which flips the fraction. And then I get x is equal to, I multiply these straight across, so 12 times 3 is 36, 1 times 2 is 2, 36 over 2 is 18, which is my final answer. Number 9, similar to the previous problems, cross multiply first. So I'm going to take these and multiply them out. I'm going to have 2x plus 1 times x plus 7, and I have 5x minus 1, so that's equal to 5 times 5x minus 1. Here I do FOIL, so I get 2x squared. I get 14x, so 2x squared, then 14x, then x, then 7. And over here I get 25x when I distribute minus my 5 when I distribute. Now I combine like terms here on this side. So I have 2x squared plus 15x plus 7 equals 25x minus 5. I need to make this equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 25x from both sides, and I'm going to add 5 to both sides. When I do this, I get 2x squared. Now this is going to be minus 10x. So this part's not positive, but this is minus 10x when I combine these terms together. And then when I add 7 and 5, I get plus 12 equals 0. Now at this point, I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to write this problem on the next page. 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. So 2x squared minus 10x plus 12 equals 0. Now I want to try to solve this. I notice that they each have a 2 in common, so I'm going to try to take the 2 out, which is my GCF. When I do that, I get x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. And now I can solve this by factoring or the quadratic formula. I look for two numbers that multiply to give me 6, add to give me negative 5. I find those numbers to be negative 3 and negative 2. So then I know that my answer are the opposite signs. It's what makes this 0. So 3 minus 3 is 0, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So my answer is 3 and 2. Now, because I looked like I didn't have much room on the other page as well, I'm going to go ahead and solve the last problem on another page. So this is going to be number 10, which is 2x minus 10 over x minus 3 is equal to x plus 3 over x. So here I do cross multiplication again. You notice that two fractions equal to each other. So on this side I have x times 2x minus 10. On the other side I have x minus 3 times x plus 3. When I do this, on this side I distribute the x, so I get 2x squared. Sorry about that, let me undo that. So I get 2x squared minus 10x. And on the other side I get difference of squares pattern, so I get x squared minus 9. Now I need to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides, and I'm going to add 9 from both sides. When I do that, I get these combined, and I get x squared. I have minus 10x, and then I have plus 9 equal to 0. I'm going to try to factor this. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me 9 and add to give me negative 10. I notice that those are going to be negative 9 and negative 1. I could also use the quadratic formula and get the same answer, just with more steps. And then I notice then that I take the opposite signs as my answers. So 9 minus 9 is 0, and positive 1 would also give me 0. So my answers are 1 and 9. As you can see, there's a lot to remember here, but I think that you guys have the skills to do it with some practice.